Bernie has been doing the rounds in the UK press.
Your book, It's Okay to be Angry About Capitalism. It's interesting because you don't seem a very angry person right now, but it's okay to be angry about capitalism. We're going to see some of that fire in a minute, maybe. Is talking about the allocation of money, isn't it?
It's like typical, like, mainstream lib journalist, isn't it? But you don't look angry right now. Why don't you constantly look angry? If you've written a book about it being okay to be angry, why do you not constantly look angry? Why do you sometimes smile?
So we're going to see some of that fire in a minute, maybe. Now, we're in the midst of a lot of industrial action at the moment here in the UK, and one of the debates is, should nurses, should ambulance workers, should other public sector workers and transport workers and teachers gone on strike, should they be paid more? And the government says, look, we have to get interest rate down and we can't pay them anymore.
All I will tell you is that in the United States, we lost thousands of nurses who died treating us in the COVID pandemic, as well as other what we call critical workers, teachers who went into the classrooms, bus drivers. These are heroes and heroines of our time. And what we have seen in the United States, and I'm sure here in the UK, is inflation has outstripped the wage increases that they have gotten.
Yep.
So I think democratic, civilized society has got to respect the hard work that nurses and teachers and bus drivers do and pay them the kind of wages they deserve.
Yeah.
Wait, with regards to the book, it's interesting, it's okay to be angry about capitalism. What is your...
They won't do that, though. Like, they won't increase their wages because they think... They have economists telling them, economists who are probably being funded by right-wing libertarian think tanks, who are saying, if you increase wages for these nurses and these striking people, what you're going to do is you're going to make inflation worse. It's not proven that that's what drives inflation. Like, many things drive inflation. And one of the things that drives inflation is huge multinational, like monopoly companies grabbing whatever opportunity they can to like up prices, like what you see with like BP and ExxonMobil at the minute, just like bumping up prices just because they fucking can. That's probably the biggest driver of inflation. They're not going to increase wages because they have these like economists who are like, oh no, you can't give poor people more money because that's going to make inflation even worse. Don't let them tell you that that's why inflation happens. It's not proven. Like, economists all disagree with each other, and the economy is an extremely complex, complicated thing, and all economists disagree with each other. They fucking hate each other. I hate learning about the economy because, like, you literally, like, you never get a straight answer on anything. But I think at least putting up minimum wage or like wages in line with inflation is the fucking least, you know, that we should be doing. They did get a bit of a raise recently, but it wasn't in line with inflation. So they've basically they're still getting a pay cut, essentially.
Wait, with regards to the book, it's interesting, it's okay to be angry about capitalism. What is your anger towards capitalism?
My anger is that in America, it's true all over the world, but I'm more familiar with the United States, we have more income and wealth inequality today than at any time in the history of America. There are three multi-billionaires in America who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Can you believe that? You have the top one.
It's not just America, it's the entire world. Like, did you see that report that came out? Who did it? Oxfam. The richest 1% bagged nearly 2/3 of all new wealth over the past 2 years. The world's 2,153 billionaires have more wealth than the 4.6 billion people who make up 60% of the planet's population, reveals a new report from Oxfam today, ahead of the WEF in Davos, Switzerland. The 22 richest men in the world have more wealth than all the women in Africa. Women and girls put 12.5 billion hours of unpaid care work each and every day. A contribution to the global economy of at least $10.8 trillion a year, more than 3 times the size of the global tech industry. Tech bros aren't going to be happy with that. Silicon Valley tech bros are not going to be happy that the girls are outworking them. Getting the richest 1% to pay just 0.5% extra tax on their wealth over the next 10 years would equal the investment needed to create 117 million jobs in sectors such as elderly and childcare, education, and health.
And we spend twice as much on healthcare as you do, and yet we have 85 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. Kids can't afford to go to college. or they leave school deeply in debt.
So, Bernie, should these multi-billionaires be forced to share the wealth? Is that your frustration?
Damn right they should. And I think we have got to say, look, you work hard. One second. You work hard. You start a business, you make money, fine, become rich. But there's got to be a limit. Do you really need $50 billion, $100 billion? Where are you going to spend that money? How many homes, how many islands are you going to own? So, you know, people work hard.
Would you tax them? Would you get...
See, that's the thing, though. Like, yeah, he's absolutely right. Like, the richest 1% are literally getting so rich, they don't know what to spend their money on anymore. And, like, that's what Elon Musk ended up doing. He ended up spending, like, half of his wealth on fucking Twitter because he was like, well, once you've bought everything that you could possibly ever buy materialistically, what are you going to buy after that? If you've materialistically got everything you could ever buy, what would you buy after that? You would buy power. And how do you buy power? By buying the social media platform where most people discuss and talk about politics. And like, yeah, he bought it for a massively overinflated price. Yeah, he's fucking shit at being a capitalist, Elon Musk, but somehow he's managed to be the most rich capitalist ever through pure luck, basically, because he's an absolute dumbass. But, like, he literally got so rich where he was like, what can I spend all of this money on? I know, it was suggested to him that he should, you know, pay to end world hunger, but that's an entirely different subject in itself, because I don't think that you can just shove a load of money into world hunger and end it. Like, I don't think you can give world hunger a price. Elon Musk got so rich, fucking fluked everything, got extremely rich, didn't know what to spend his money on, decided to spend half of his money on power, played a massively overinflated price for Twitter, but it doesn't matter because what the hell else is he gonna spend $44 billion fucking dollars on? It doesn't matter to him. Money doesn't mean anything to Elon Musk anymore. Like, it's just this never-ending pot to him that he can just throw at anything. But like, you can't just like throw a load of money at world hunger and expect it to like end at the same time, because you can't put a price. It's impossible to put a price on like ending world hunger. So it's like you can't do that either, even if you wanted to. I don't think you can put a price on it because there's so many different things to consider. There's so many corrupt governments in the world. It's not like you could chuck money at a corrupt government and expect everything to be fixed. There's so many complex power struggles that you have to work out beforehand. You can't just chuck money at a corrupt government and expect them to give it to their poor people. They'll keep it all for themselves. It's like how Mr. Beast would solve everything. You know, it's like Mr. Beast's philosophy. Oh, there's problems in the world? Chuck money at it, baby. And then praise the billionaire who chucked the money at it. That's how we solve all of the world's problems.
Would you tax them? Would you get the money back?
Absolutely. I mean, we should have a progressive tax system which says to billionaires, you're going to pay your fair share of taxes. In my own view, to be honest with you, may sound radical. I don't think we need billionaires. You want to be rich? That's fine. Take good care of your family. Buy 5 homes. But you don't need 50 homes.
The one thing that we would love to talk to you about, though, because it resonates here in the UK.
Resonates with me, because I get a lot of things talked about.
Is when you became a hit because of your mittens. Now, I think you could become a mitten billionaire. But because if you could market these...
So let's stop talking about all of this silly wealth accumulation stuff. Why don't we talk about your mittens, Bernie?
There's a market, particularly here in the UK. Did someone knit these mittens for you?
Yeah, somebody in my state knitted it, and I had them in my pocket. I mean, it wasn't like a big deal. I mean, that's what I wear every day. It gets very cold in Vermont.
Yeah.
Communism is when mittens.
Game of Thrones.
Right. What's next on the agenda? On the communist agenda? What's next? What's next? He went on Sky News, guys.
People tend to, in recent years, attacked the radical right, not the radical left.
Well, I think the demagogues all over the world take the anger that people feel. People should be angry. They should be angry that their kids, in many cases, are doing worse than they are going to be doing. They can't afford basic necessities of life. They are angry. And what demagogues say is, don't look at the people who really own the system. Don't look at the ruling class. Don't look at the people who cause the problems. Look at immigrants. Look at people of color. Look at gay people. Look at people who might be different than you. You're supposed to hate them. Let's rally around hating those people. Rather than...
What others would say is, look, you're coming from the radical left. We've seen what happens.
I don't think it's all that radical.
Do you not?
No.
That's interesting.
She called him the radical left.
Radical left.
What happens?
I don't think it's all that radical.
Do you not?
No.
That's
I do not.
interesting.
Fighting for human rights, for economic rights. Is it radical to say that every worker in America or the UK should earn a living wage? Is it really?
I think people shouldn't die of starvation under capitalism. That sounds to me like the
Radical left.
Radical to say everybody's entitled to quality health care, quality education, affordable housing? Is it really radical to demand that billionaires start paying their fair share of taxes? I don't think that's radical.
I guess what others would say, though, is like, look, if you want to make a change, you can't just sit from the sidelines coming up with these ideas that sound great. You've got to win elections. You haven't won an election in the States. Jeremy Corbyn failed.
Well, I beg your pardon. I have won a lot of elections. I am the United States Senate.
That's true, for the presidency. You're right. I stand corrected. But you get where I'm coming from, that you have to compromise. You have to win from the centre in order to...
No, I don't accept that. In fact, the way real change always takes place is when millions of people...
Right. I know she's asking awful questions, but you've got to realise when you're watching mainstream liberal media, when you're a journalist working for mainstream liberal media, you've got to ask the questions that you think the audience are thinking. It's not like necessarily what she's thinking, you know?
I don't accept that. In fact, the way real change always takes place is when millions of people demand...
It's like... it's a good way of framing a question, to like frame the question in a way that you think most of your audience are thinking, in my opinion. And I think, like, yeah, most of the audience are probably thinking, oh, you're so radically left. Like, if you're not that plugged into politics, which most of the public aren't, I'm sorry, I know most of you in chat are probably, you haven't touched grass in a long while. Me neither. But like, most people touch grass, okay? Newsflash. They don't think about politics in the same way we do. She's framing questions in a way that people who touch grass sometimes think about politics. They'll think about Jeremy Corbyn and they'll think about Bernie Sanders in the same way. Oh, you're too far left. You need to be centre. You need to be kind of centrist to be able to win elections. That's the kind of thing that most people are going to be thinking because they're not very plugged in and they don't think about it a lot. And they've probably been taken in by some of the right-wing talking points because they work so well in media as like short, snappy sound bites. So like, I don't know, I think people get really pissed off at journalists sometimes, but I like to give them a little bit of a leeway because they do. What you have to do when you're working on mainstream media is you have to sort of ask the questions that the people watching mainstream media, like the boomers who watch television still, are going to be thinking, you know, and they're a massive, massive voter base. So, yeah. Accept that.
In fact, the way real change always takes place is when millions of people demand it. And then suddenly you have presidents or prime ministers say, I think that that's a good idea, because they know that millions of people want it. At the end of the day, what struggle is about is working class people standing up and demanding justice. And the people on top will respond to that.
Does the UK have a left party? Well, when Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party, but the Labour Party basically split into two. The people who liked the radical left part of the Labour Party, and then the people who were like, oh, no, we need to be centrist. But what Jeremy Corbyn did is he got a lot of very young people very engaged in politics. I think that's the best thing that he did. And I think Jeremy Corbyn got me invested in politics. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So you can thank Jeremy Corbyn for that. But his policies were extremely popular, especially with young people. And he got more people than ever to sign up to join the Labour Party than ever before, just to be able to vote him to be the leader of the Labour Party. I was one of those people. And for the first time in a very long time, I was actually invested in politics because I was like, wow, someone's here who actually represents my values, who actually looks like they might get a little bit of power. And then there was the election, and what the Tories basically did was used the very right-wing tabloid media in this country to basically smear him and call him a massive anti-Semite. And then he lost. And then there was this like investigation, and basically the Labour Party tried to make tried to make Jeremy Corbyn admit that he'd been anti-Semitic. He refused to outright say that he'd been anti-Semitic. And since then, he's like been suspended from the Labour Party. And Keir Starmer has been like, we're not going to unsuspend him, so he's not going to be allowed to stand as a candidate for the leader of the Labour Party for the next election, because basically they think that he's like the black sheep of the party still, because everybody thinks he's an anti-Semite now, basically. So the question has been asked whether Jeremy Corbyn is going to stand as an independent instead, but in reality, that's very unlikely to happen, because Jeremy Corbyn has been part of the Labour Party for how long? Basically his entire political career, which is a long time, a very long time. And he's been elected in his constituency like over and over for a very, very long time. I don't think he's going to leave the Labour Party to be an independent anytime soon. But hey, anything can happen, you know. I believe it was a smear campaign, because they were worried about Corbyn's extremely popular-based policies actually getting popular. You know, his policies, such as the 4-day working week and free broadband for everyone, like, we're only just realising now that actually some experts are actually telling Parliament now these are good things that you should be doing. Like, years later, you know, as soon as like you call something communist or socialist, it's like that puts, you know, a massive smear on it, and all of a sudden it's radical socialism, radical communism, and it shouldn't happen. You just use the buzzwords, and you know, people go along with it, don't they?
Nobody says, Bernie, why are we spending twice as much on healthcare as the people in the UK? And we've got 85 million people who are uninsured or uninsured.
Exactly.
What's wrong with our healthcare system?
Bernie, your healthcare system is fine because Mr. Beast is paying for people's eye surgery. Have you not heard of Mr. Beast? Bernie? Does Bernie not know about Mr. Beast?
Bernie, why is it that we are the only major country on earth in the United States not to guarantee paid family and medical leave? There are women I understand you have 2 children, right?
I do.
All right. In the United States, there are women today giving birth who will have to go back to work in a week or 2 in order to take care of their family. They do not get any.
Like, literally, your vagina will still have stitches on it. You know when you give birth, like a hell of a lot of women, their vaginas literally rip open and they have to sew them back together. And it causes a lot of pain for a very long time. If you had to go back to work in a fucking week, Jesus fucking Christ.
Paid family leave. That is pretty crazy to me. All right. So what we are trying to do is build a movement to address those inequalities.
You didn't know that? I think people should know, like, the grim details of birth. People should really know that, and then they might realize why maternity leave is actually a really necessary thing. You lie on that bed. Most women shit themselves. They piss themselves. The hero midwives clean, what they'll do is they'll clean the shit up from the bed, and they won't even tell the woman giving birth that she's shit. Like, because a lot of the time they're in so much pain that they don't even realize that they've shat everywhere on the bed, and they'll just scoop up that shit and they'll whisk it away, and they won't even tell the mother that she's shat everywhere. And then a lot of the time they will rip their vaginas open, and there will be blood everywhere, and they have to be sewn up in various different places. There you go, guys. That's why maternity leave should be a thing.
We are trying to do is build a movement to address those inequalities. And media often just will not.
Did you join at the wrong time?
Not because they're owned by very wealthy billionaires, and they don't want to stir things up. So I often don't get the questions that I think need to be asked, not just to me, but to other elected officials.
OK, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
LBC, baby! And we got a little bit of Andrew Marr.
Jeremy Corbyn,
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's the Bernie Sanders of the UK. You're both very, very different politicians in many ways, but he was a very, very popular left leader who galvanised another generation of people. They all came behind him, and he has now been absolutely pushed to the side of British politics to the point where he can't even stand as a Labour candidate in his own constituency. And I wonder what your reflections are on that.
Well, I'm not going to get involved in Labour Party politics here. I don't certainly know enough, but I do know Corbyn, and I think, as you indicated, here's a guy who inspired a lot of.
It keeps on saying that as well. Like it's not that hard to understand. It's basically exactly the same as US politics. Basically exactly the same, except we have universal healthcare and beans.
Of younger people for a new vision for society, a lot of working class people, and his willingness to stand up to big money. And I think that is worthy of a lot of respect.
Do you think it's sad that they can't run on the same ticket, he and the current Labour?
I don't understand. I really don't what's going on with Labour Party politics. But it does seem a little bit strange to me that somebody who's been in the Labour Party his entire life, was leader of the party, brought, as I understand it, hundreds of thousands of people in.
He just knows he'll be dismissed if it seems like he's telling Brits what to do / think. Yeah, I think that possibly might be it, yeah.
Was leader of the party, brought, as I understand it, hundreds of thousands of people into the party, is now told that he can't run. But that's about my knowledge of Labour Party politics.
So why is it that in this period they so often turn to the radical right rather than to the left?
Good question.
Because the message is easier and simpler to understand.
And I think, it depends.
Instead of hating a system, which is what we're trying to say, what they're trying to say is hate this group of people that I can literally point to. That's easier, isn't it? That's easier for you to hate that group of people, isn't it? That feels good, doesn't it? That feels good that I've given you an enemy, doesn't it? You feel good. You feel good now you have someone to hate, don't you? There you go. Get angry. Get really angry. Whereas the left is like, you know that meme of like the big hench Doge dog and the little like pathetic little beta Doge. The left is like the little beta Doge is like, you need to hate the system. It's nuanced and complex, but you need to fight against the system. And the system is full of nuanced and complex policies that have been put in place over many decades, especially since the 70s because of neoliberalism. Many policies have been put in place since the 70s, specifically to help the rich because of neoliberalism and because of capitalism and because basically the elite and politicians are basically the same group. They're both helping each other. You should fight for policies to... No! And then the big meme Doge comes along and goes, no! Hate those people right there. That's easier, isn't it, to hate those people right there? You know, those people that just came across the ocean in a little dinghy boat because their own country is war-torn, and now they're staying in a hotel next door. It's them. I feel like that's the way. I feel like that's the best way I can describe it. You know, am I crushing it? Am I crushing streaming? Am I crushing political commentary right now? This is why I can't do mainstream media because this is how I would do the commentary on a program like Andrew Marr. Like Andrew Marr would say to me, why are people attracted to the radical right? And I'll be sat there on the other end of the desk like, so it's like that meme with the little pathetic little Doge and then the big Doge. Yes, carry on.
About the rich and the powerful.
So why is it that in this period they so often turn to the radical right rather than to the left?
Good question. And I think, it depends country by country. But I think a lot of the right-wing demagogues have addressed the anger, recognized the anger that many folks on the left have not. People are angry. When I talk about being angry about capitalism, this is me. That is, you have a right to be angry if your standard of living is in decline while people on top are doing very well. You have a right to be angry if the fossil fuel industry is destroying this planet. And I think a lot of the folks on the left are kind of intellectual. They talk about the issues. And you have Trump coming along tapping that anger and directing that anger against immigrants, against people of color, against the poor. And I think kind of that's what's happening.
That's what's happening all around the place. Now, one big difference, obviously, between our countries is that we have socialised medicine. We have the NHS.
You made it for me. Immigrant.
You see, the inner contributions of capitalism are so vast that the system will lash out like a wounded animal trying to survive. The problem is those at the top will always be the ones invested to keep it this.
But I feel like you could write such a like an absolute essay for this.
So I wonder what your message might be for all those people in British politics who are suggesting that to keep the NHS, to reform the NHS, we need to introduce much more private money. We introduce...
Here he goes! Here he goes with the same question. Oh, we have a lot of problems with the NHS in this country, so maybe we should make it more like the American system, where everyone is so fucked that they're turning to YouTubers to pay for their eye surgery.
And looking at what's happening here, do you see a risk that Britain starts to look at the American model and go in that direction?
Do not look at the American model. Please do not.
Please,
Build on what you have, improve what you have. Healthcare is a human right. That's what it is. And that was established here in, 1948. That was an extraordinary achievement. And I understand your system has problems. Deal with those problems. But don't think that insurance companies and privatizations are going to make the situation better. They will only make it much worse.
You got me burning up. You got me burning. You got me burning up. You got me burning up. You got me burning up. You got me burning up.
Burning up for Bernie. We got a BBC Newsnight section.
You say that billionaires in America are every bit as dangerous as oligarchs surrounding Vladimir Putin, but how can you justify that? Presumably, billionaires in America don't have private armories. They're not necessarily laundering billions of dollars. Who does that?
I didn't say that they were as dangerous. What I said is that in America, what we say is Russia has oligarchs. Do they? Absolutely. Is Putin part of that? Absolutely. But in America, have you heard anyone talk about oligarchy? The answer is we don't. And in the book, we make it clear that you have more concentration of ownership right now, more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had, more corporate control over the media than we have ever had. And danger is when you have billionaires who can contribute unlimited amounts of money into the political process and elect the candidates that they want. That is dangerous.
But then you've got billionaires like Bill
Jeffrey
Gates. You can
kisses.
say what he's done for medical development all over the world.
I know Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a nice guy, but still the point is...
couldn't do.
Elon Musk is absolutely an oligarch. Like, that's one of the oligarchs he's talking about. To be honest, I wish Bernie would be a little bit more direct. Like, I wish he would actually name names, you know?
Is he worth is anybody? When you have, should we have a society?
Maybe there's reasons that he doesn't do that. I'm not sure. Like, maybe political reasons.
With so much income and wealth inequality. This is not an attack. I say it in the book. It's not an attack on individuals. It's an attack on a system that allows for that inequality.
One of America's big problems are guns. And yet you want to reform the Constitution, but you don't say anything about the Second Amendment. You don't say anything about getting rid of guns. Why
Because
should
the
it be
vast
like
majority
Canada?
of the people, we have people who hunt, people who do target practice, that's all. That's our culture. Your culture may be different.
Yeah, like, literally, at this point, I get it. America can't just fucking get rid of guns. It's literally impossible at this point for America to get rid of guns. It's so deeply baked in to your culture that it would be impossible. But that doesn't mean that having guns is a good thing. Like, have you seen any other country in the world that doesn't allow the general public to buy guns? Be like, oh, I really wish we were like America and everybody had guns. Have you seen any other country in the world be like, I wish we had guns? I understand that you're in that situation and you're never going to get out of it at this point, but that doesn't mean it's a good situation to be in. But you should at least increase background checks and to make your systems around the acquisition of the purchases of guns to be a lot more stringent. But I absolutely understand that you're not gonna ban guns anytime. Can prize my gun out of my cold dead hands.
But the danger is that we have people who have guns who are often should not have guns. They are people who have been involved in domestic violence, mentally unstable, and what we have to do is have thorough background checks as to who owns guns.
When you wore mittens to the Biden inauguration...
The fucking mittens again! So anyway, mittens.
It caused a sensation and spewed a whole...
I wouldn't use the word sensation.
Oh, it did. Oh, it did. And some incredible memes. Which are your favourites?
All of it.
Oh, just like, if you're a fucking liberal mainstream media journalist, don't even say the word meme. Don't print out memes onto A4 sheets of paper and shove them in Bernie Sanders' face. Just leave that to the millennials and the Zoomers. All right?
Some of them are really funny. I mean, you got Forrest Gump there?
I haven't got Forrest Gump there.
I think you do. On the other side, is that him?
Yeah, got Forrest Gump there. Got you on the...
I think I'm on the moon. Is that me on the moon?
You're on the moon. You're on the solar system. And here you are on above the ground with all the workers. What do you like?
Well, I think they're all very clever. But what's interesting, people don't know this.
How old is Bernie, by the way? Is he in his 80s? He's in his 80s, right? Height, 1.83 meters. He was born in 1941, aged 81 years old. And they're shoving memes. They're shoving memes. They're shoving memes in his face. What do you think of this, Bernie? Just leave him the fuck alone. Let him do his politics. Look, he's like, look at his poor face. I know I'm doing body language analysis right now. This is the face of an 81-year-old man who's just been asked to look at some printed out memes.
They're all very clever. But what's interesting, people don't know this, is what my campaign did is we took that meme, we put it on sweatshirts and T-shirts, we raised millions of dollars, which were then donated to charities for low-income people in Vermont.
There you go.
Bernie Sanders, thank you very much indeed.